Well, I think overall the Saudis have been fairly consistent in maintaining that this was in some form or another, Iranian aggression. So for them, for example, they don't really draw a distinction between the Houthis and Iran itself. So I've interviewed several members of former members of Saudi government, and I've asked them, do you draw a distinction between the Houthis, the rebel group in Yemen, and the Iranian government? And they said, no, that we don't. So I think in part this is a degree of consistency from them to say that these are Iranian weapons. They're not really changing the line here. The question is, of course, where were they fired from? And here we come to a broader we need to understand more broadly the relationship between Saudi Arabia and Iran, which has been particularly contentious since 1979, and particularly the current government in power in Saudi Arabia under Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, who has been viewed as taking quite an aggressive line in terms of regional politics, in terms of their invasion of Yemen and their intervention in the Yemeni civil war, and now perhaps being viewed as taking a harder line towards Iran. So that's the broader context for why there might be some question and why we might need more international consideration of whether this evidence is convincing.
Even if Saudi Arabia was to produce evidence that convinced the world that Iran was behind these attacks, what can Saudi Arabia do realistically, given the fact that these attacks have exposed how vulnerable its oil facilities are?
Yes, I think this is something they're very concerned about at the moment. So there are a number of options available, some of which we're already starting to see occur. So the first step, of course, is to show where these attacks originated from. So to that end, not only are the Saudis displaying these weapons, there are a number of statements from the US administration claiming that these may be of Iranian origin and that there is some evidence. The US administration is a little confused on this front, I would say, but generally pointing towards them originating from Iran, but we're still waiting for further clarification. So the first step is to determine where these attacks originated from. To that end, there's currently a UN team headed towards Saudi Arabia who will be investigating further. The next step is what we've seen occur just in the last 48 hours or so of announcement of sanctions and further economic pressure against the Iranian government. And beyond that, what we're starting to talk about is potential military confrontation. But I wouldn't expect to see direct conventional military confrontation yet. I think it's pretty clear that most actors, Saudi Arabia involved, and Saudi Arabia included, and Iran included, are not interested in direct military confrontation. They're all aware that they have a lot to lose should there be direct confrontation. Instead, we're probably more likely to see a continuation of a recent trend in international conflict, which is sort of ambiguous, potentially deniable attacks by different partners. And that's what I would expect to see should sanctions not prove effective.
I mean, it's very unusual, isn't it, also, to see Saudi Arabia sort of leading the drive for this. In the past, we've seen the US doing this. So this really is a change, isn't it, for the Saudis?
Yes, it really is. And I think in that, we would look directly to the Saudi Arabian leadership under sort of Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. They really do view Iran as an existential threat, if you like. So they have seen over the last, from their perspective, they have seen Iran extend its influence into the Middle East. They view the Houthis, as I mentioned, the Yemeni rebel group, as an extension of the arm of the Iranian state. They also are concerned about Iranian penetration of Iraq into Syria and Lebanon. So for them, this is a further provocation from a neighbor that they view as quite aggressive and that they believe they need to take quite a firm line in response to, especially given the impact on their oil infrastructure.